the second section of our Chapter 1 lecture video discussion. In the previous section, we introduced ourselves to statistics, and we said statistics is the science of learning from data. So basically what we are mostly concerned about in statistics, we want to know more about certain individuals of interest. But to be able to know these individuals or to be able to understand the element, we need to collect numerical facts, because numerical facts are better for decision making than ignorance. But to be able to collect the fact, we need to identify a certain characteristic of interest. And once that characteristic of interest is identified, we will go ahead and collect numbers or facts that describe the characteristic of interest. We say these characteristics of interest are called variables, and variables can be categorized either as categorical or numerical. Another name for categorical variables is qualitative variable, and another name for numerical variable is quantitative variable. What we will be doing in this section is we are going to learn how to summarize these numerical facts or these qualitative variables. When we collect these facts or when we collect this data, we can go ahead and use different ways to summarize it. The first way we summarize the data is through what we call graphical visualization. I'll give you an example. Let's say I collect the shoe size, or maybe I should do I'll use a more relatable example here. Let's say we have a variable like hours of study. How many hours did a student study a course? Now, hours of study is a quantitative variable, and so the values of hours of study will be just numbers. Once we collect these numbers, we can use tools like Excel, R Commander, SPSS, or Minitab to describe or to summarize the values. And so the numbers that we collected can be graphically represented using these statistical tools. Another way we can also summarize these data set or the values collected on the variable will be to use tables. So the first approach is we can use statistical tools to create a graph, or we can use tables to summarize them, or we can use numbers to summarize these data set. And when we get to chapter 2, this is basically going to be the bulk of everything we will discuss in chapter 2. We're going to learn how to use graphs like bar graph, histogram, pie chart, and stem plot to visualize our data. In the same vein, we will learn how to use frequency tables to describe or to summarize the count or percentages or probabilities in our data distribution. And then the last part of chapter 2, we will learn how to use numbers or numerical summaries like mean, median, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile to summarize our values. But it's interesting to know that in statistics, even though our goal is to learn everything about a population, what we do is we choose a sample. Now, for the purpose of your first midterm test, it's important to understand the difference between a population and a sample. What is a population? A population basically represents the set of all the elements or individuals of interest in a particular study. And so what we want to do is we always want to learn more about everybody in a specific location or everybody that is of interest to us. But because sometimes of time, because of the lack of resources, and because of the lack of manpower, what we usually do is we take a sample. And so we select a small group of people from the population, we study that small group of people, and then we infer or we conclude for the entire population using that small group of people. Let me give you an example here. Let's say I want to study the income level of these 12 individuals. These 12 individuals here represent the total group of friends that I have. And so that is the population, the entire set of friends in my circle. But because sometimes of time, because of the lack of resources, I would not ask everybody in this group to tell me their income level. What I can do is I can choose a sample, a subset, a small group of people out of the entire population. And using scientific approach, and we learn more about different methods of sampling selection, using different methods of sampling selection, I can choose a number of friends randomly to create my sample. And so then I study this small sample of 4 friends, and based on my summaries of their income level, I will have a fair idea what the entire population income level is. And so that is how we perform statistical inference. And statistical inference is applicable in almost every statistical study that we perform. We don't ask the entire individuals in the population. We take the small group, we study the small group, and then we infer for the entire population. Think about a desire to study about individuals in a country like, say, China or India or any of the highly populated countries we know in the world. We cannot ask every person in the population of, say, 1.6 billion what their age is, for example. And so, what we do in statistics, we take a small sample out of the population, we study the sample, and then we infer for the entire population. Now, some cases we may have the resources and the time to be able to do that. Government organizations like Statistics Canada has the resource, the time, and the finances to be able to conduct a study of the entire population without taking a sample. When that is done, we call it a census. And so a census is when we collect data on the entire population. And that's possible because we have the finances, we have the manpower, we have the means to be able to conduct a census. But in most cases, when we are unable to do that, what we do is we conduct a sample survey. And so when we take a data set on the entire population, that is a census. But when we take a data set on just a small sample out of that population, we call that sample survey. And when we conduct a sample survey, we use statistical inference where we take the conclusion or the summary of our sample survey to infer for the entire population. Now, one very important process in statistics called analytics, which has so far become one of the most insightful way to make decision is and is also becoming one of the popular way of making decision is analytics. Analytics basically is the process of transforming your data into information and then using business intelligence applied on the information to make better decisions. It's interesting to know that most of the big corporations we know around these days, like YouTube, Facebook, Alphabet, which was previously Google, Netflix, think of any big corporation out there, and you will understand that they use analytics, a process to transform the data they collect on you and I into insight so they could make better decisions. Why do they do that? It increased their competitiveness. It increased their ability to forecast accurately. It helped them to quantify the risks and yield better alternatives through analysis. Let me give you some examples of how analytics are basically done, and then we'll look at the 3 categories of analytics. And so think of a company like YouTube. When you go on YouTube on your smart device or your laptop or whatever device that you use, you will notice they have what we call short videos. Short videos of about a minute or maximum a minute and a half that sort of catches your attention and sort of becomes addictive to the point where it's difficult for you to leave. Now, when you watch a single short video, your smart device or whatever device you use sends analytics, a summary of how long you spent on that video, how often you watch video related to that, and what kind of interest that you generated from watching that video. It sends that over to the corporation. And so the corporation collect a lot of data from you, and in using this data, they go through the scientific process of analytics, transform the data into insightful information so they can know what kind of videos you are interested in. And so then they start moving you in that direction, giving you videos related to that. And so let's say, for example, I pick up my smartphone, I go on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or in any of the social media platforms that you could think of, and I start watching videos on cats. You will notice that as I scroll through videos on cats, or as I scroll through different videos, I spend much time on videos on cats. Now, the analytics being transferred from the data set being transferred from my phone to the big corporation like YouTube or Instagram or whichever, are information on what kind of video did Jonathan watch? How long did Jonathan spend watching videos on cats? Did Jonathan quickly skip through videos on, say, dogs? And so that sort of helps them know who you are so that they can accurately forecast the kind of videos you want to watch. Now, this is done in Netflix. After watching a movie, Netflix can give you some recommendation, and before you know, you are hooked onto Netflix for hours in your day. Now, to perform analytics, we go through the three different categories. And these three categories, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, can be performed at every different stage. For example, in descriptive analytics, what we hope to do is we want to study what happened in the past. And so we take data queries, we take report, we take visualization based on data just to know what happened in the past. Once we're done with descriptive analytics, we have a fair idea of the history. Then we move on to what we call predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is where we learn what is going to happen in the future. And so based on our descriptive analytics, we are able to create a trend and see what is going to happen in the future. And then knowing that, we can go ahead and perform a prescriptive analytics. And so the first stage is descriptive, where we learn what happened in the past. Predictive, where we forecast or we predict what is going to happen in the future. And prescriptive analytics, where we provide advices on the right course of action. And so let's say, for example, some time ago, a friend of mine had a business in town here in Prince George. The business wasn't doing great. He requested for a business analyst. The business analyst came in and said, let me take a look at what happened in the past. Give me all your reports. Give me all your data set. Using statistical tools, he was able to learn a little bit more about the performance of the company in the past, descriptive analytics. And then, using statistical tools, he was able to forecast what is going to happen in the future, predict what is going to happen in the future. And then went ahead to conclude with a prescriptive analytics. Analytics help us to make better decisions and understand the statistics. We use descriptive and predictive models to make data-driven decisions. And a lot of companies these days are very competitive because of analytics. They are able to increase their competitiveness because they don't just sell to their customers, they know their customers. And so that's a very important thing to note for the purpose of your midterm test. Now, I want to talk about big data. To be able to predict accurately, you need a lot of data set. And so a lot of organizations collect big data, large and complex data set on their customers. When I walk to a McDonald's shop and I buy stuff, and before I leave, they ask me to provide a feedback. That is big data collected on me. You see, big data is mostly described by a large amount of data set. Data set that is so large that it takes some time to collect and process. And data set that comes in different forms, different types, variety. So with big data, three things or three features or qualities that are related to big data is the volume. It's a lot of data on you. The velocity is a data set that is so large that the speed at which the data is collected and processed is very slow. And variety, it's not just about your address or your telephone numbers. The data they collect on you include text, videos, audios, and so on and so forth. And using data warehousing technique, process of capturing, storing, and maintaining the data, they are able to transform these raw data sets into insightful information. And so whenever it's time for them to know more about you, perform what you call data mining. This is where automatically the system will extract predictive information from the large database and be able to know more about you. Companies like Amazon use big data and statistical software to know more about their client. For example, if I go on Amazon and I buy a product like, say, a shoe, you will notice that Amazon will automatically recommend other products for you. Financial organizations use big data, and communication organizations also use big data as well. Through data mining, they are able to send you special offers based on your purchase trend. If they see that you like buying stuff related to items like dresses, shoes, it's super easy for them to send you jackets and other stuff. And that is all because they collect big data, and using statistical or business analytics, they are able to turn the big data set into insightful information. Using statistical models, they are able to do that. Now, I want us to end our discussion on chapter 1 by looking at computers and statistical analysis. You see, in the olden days, all this kind of stuff were done on paper. The good news is we have tools and computer software these days that are able to effectively manipulate and analyze our data set. Think of open source tools like R and R Commander software, which are like super good but also free. You can always download and install R and R Commander software on your computer to perform complex statistical analysis. And there are also very popular commercial tools like Excel, which I believe most of you have on your computers. But apart from Excel, we have very special and powerful commercial tools like SAS, SPSS, and Minitab. All these can be used to perform effective data analytics. Now, big corporations like Google, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, they have specialized big data tools. They have specialized tools like Oracle Database Management System, DBMS, that are used to analyze big data set. But it's important to know that is beyond the scope of this course. And so that is a quick introduction to statistics. We started by looking at what statistics is, what we want to know, a variable of interest, a data set collected on the variable of interest. The variable plus the data set gives us a distribution. Now, once we collect the data set on the variable, the next thing we do is we summarize it using graphical tools, using tables, or numerical summaries. And then we ended chapter 1 with analytics. Thank you very much for joining me on this discussion here. I'll see you in the next video, which will be the first part of our chapter 2 lecture discussion. Thank you and have a nice day. See you in the next video.